When the Sonora Cartel set their sights on Shadow Creek Ranch, they thought it was just another vulnerable target in the remote mountains of Arizona. What they didn't expect was that the quiet female rancher running the place wasn't just any ordinary woman. She was Kate Martinez, a decorated ex-Special Forces operator with skills that would make even the most hardened criminals think twice. Their plan to intimidate and control a small rancher was about to become their worst nightmare. The morning sun creeps over the rugged peaks of the Coronado Mountains, casting long shadows across Shadow Creek's vast expanse. Kate's boots crunch against the gravel as she makes her early rounds, checking fences and livestock with the same methodical precision she once used to clear buildings in Baghdad. Her trained eyes scan the horizon, a habit from years of combat operations that never quite fades. The ranch, spanning nearly 2,000 acres of pristine mountain terrain, had been her grandfather's legacy. Miguel Martinez chose this remote patch of Arizona wilderness after returning from Vietnam, building it from nothing into a thriving cattle operation. Now, 3 generations later, Kate continues his work, finding peace in the solitude after her own wars. Sarah Chen, the local veterinarian, pulls up in her dusty pickup truck for their weekly check of the herd. She's been Kate's closest friend since her return to civilian life, one of the few people who knows the full extent of her military background. "Morning, Kate. How's that injured calf doing?" Sarah calls out, grabbing her medical bag. "Strong as ever," Kate responds, leading her to the barn where they've been treating a young bull that got tangled in barbed wire last week. Though something's got the herd spooked lately, they're bunching up at night, staying close to the ranch house. Her combat instincts, honed through years of special operations, recognize the signs. Animals often sense trouble before humans do. Sarah's expression turns serious as they check the calf's healing leg. "Have you heard about the meeting in town yesterday? Some company called Southwest Agricultural Development Corporation is making big promises, talking about revitalizing the whole region, bringing in jobs, modernizing ranching operations." Kate's face darkens. She'd caught wind of the meeting, but chose to stay away. Too many memories of similar development schemes in war zones, legitimate businesses acting as fronts for darker operations. Their spokesman, Marco Ramirez, has been asking questions about local ranches, specifically about properties along the mountain passes. The conversation is interrupted by the distant rumble of motorcycles. 3 riders approach the ranch, their bikes gleaming in the morning sun. Kate recognizes James Hawkins among them, a fellow Special Forces veteran who now leads the local chapter of the Desert Wolves Motorcycle Club, a group composed entirely of combat veterans. Hawk kills his engine, removing his helmet. His weathered face carries the same alert expression Kate remembers from their days running operations in Afghanistan. "Got a minute, Kate? There's something you need to know about these new investors in town." The next hour reveals a disturbing pattern. Hawk's club maintains connections across the border, and word is that Southwest Agricultural isn't what it seems. The Sonora Cartel has been using similar tactics in other remote areas, moving in with legitimate businesses, buying up strategic properties, slowly establishing control over transportation corridors. "They're especially interested in mountain ranches," Hawk explains, gesturing to the rugged terrain surrounding Shadow Creek. "Perfect for their operation. Remote, hard to surveil, multiple access points to the border. Your property sits right at the crossroads of 3 major mountain passes." Kate's jaw tightens as she processes the information, her mind automatically shifting into tactical assessment mode. "They can make all the offers they want. This land isn't for sale." Her grandfather's words echo in her memory. "Land is the only thing worth dying for, Majita. It's the only thing they're not making more of." "Might not be that simple," Hawk warns, his voice carrying the weight of experience. These people don't take no for an answer. And they've been asking about you, digging into backgrounds. So far, your military records are sealed, but they're trying to figure out what kind of resistance they might face. Sarah speaks up, concern evident in her voice. We should inform Sheriff Davidson. But before she can continue, Hawk shakes his head. Already tried. But with no concrete evidence, his hands are tied. Plus, Southwest Agricultural's donations to the county have already bought them some friends in high places. Kate watches her cattle grazing in the distance, remembering the lessons her grandfather taught her about stewardship of the land. Every ridge, every valley, every waterhole holds memories of 3 generations of Martinez family history. If they think threatening me will make me roll over, they don't know who they're dealing with. Hawk exchanges glances with his fellow riders, understanding passing between them. You're not alone in this, Kate. My boys and I have seen too many communities fall to these tactics. Shadow Creek won't be one of them. As the motorcycles roar away, Kate turns to Sarah. Better stock up on medical supplies. Something tells me, Sue, we might need them. The words carry the weight of combat experience. She recognizes the signs of approaching conflict, the same tension she felt before operations in remote mountain valleys on the other side of the world. Sarah's hand rests briefly on her shoulder. Whatever's coming, Kate, you've got more friends than you know. The gesture reminds Kate of similar moments of solidarity before combat missions, the quiet understanding between people facing shared danger. The sun climbs higher as Kate returns to her daily routine, but there's a new tension in the air. Her cattle cluster nervously near the ranch house, sensing the change in atmosphere. In town, Marco Ramirez stands at the window of his newly opened office, studying satellite images of Shadow Creek Ranch. His finger traces the property boundaries, lingering on the marked locations of the mountain passes. The woman won't sell, his associate reports. Ramirez's smile carries professional coldness. Everyone has a breaking point. We just found out she lives alone on 2,000 acres. Let's see how stubborn she remains when she realizes how vulnerable that makes her. Back at the ranch, Kate sits on her porch, methodically cleaning her grandfather's old lever action rifle. The familiar action brings back memories of him teaching her to shoot long before she ever thought about military service. The ranch's dogs bark in the distance, their tone carrying warning rather than alarm. She recognizes the pattern. Someone's watching the property, staying just out of sight. Dorothy, Kate's younger sister, arrives with supplies from town. Having overcome her own battles with PTSD after 3 tours as a combat medic, she understands the brewing situation better than most. Should have known they'd find their way here eventually, she says, settling onto the porch steps. Tank called. Told me what's brewing. Kate continues working on the rifle, her movements precise and practiced. Just didn't think they'd target Shadow Creek first. The implications hang heavy in the air. Their ranch's strategic location makes it valuable for more than just cattle operations. As the sun sets over the Coronado Mountains, casting long shadows across Shadow Creek, 2 worlds prepare for collision. In town, motorcycles idle outside the Desert Wolves clubhouse, their riders planning in low voices, and on her porch, Catherine Martinez loads her rifle, knowing that tomorrow will bring a fight she never wanted, but won't back down from. The wind carries dust across the empty streets of the small mountain town, and with it, the certainty that everything is about to change. Kate's years of Special Forces training taught her to recognize the signs of impending conflict, the subtle shifts in routine, the way people's eyes linger too long, the careful positioning of vehicles around town. The cartel thinks they're dealing with a simple female rancher. They're about to learn why you don't underestimate someone who spent a decade in the world's most elite military units. Dorothy watches her sister's focused movements, recognizing the shift in her demeanor. The quiet rancher is falling away, replaced by the methodical special forces operator who led countless missions in the world's most dangerous places. They have no idea what they're walking into, do they? She asks softly. Kate's response carries the quiet confidence that made her legendary among her special forces teammates. No, they don't. The rifle's action clicks shut with finality as the desert wind carries the first hints of approaching storm clouds. Shadow Creek Ranch stands as it has for 3 generations, but tomorrow will test whether the legacy of the Martinez family is strong enough to withstand the gathering storm. The Shadow Creek Town Hall stands packed to capacity, voices rising above the whine of struggling air conditioners. Marco Ramirez commands attention from the podium, his tailored suit a stark contrast to the worn jeans and work shirts filling the room. Behind him, a projector displays ambitious plans: modern agricultural facilities, housing developments, shopping centers, and a state-of-the-art medical clinic. Think about what this means for Shadow Creek. Ramirez's voice carries authority and promise. 500 new jobs, modern healthcare facilities, affordable housing for our seniors. All we need is your trust and cooperation. His eyes scan the crowd, lingering briefly on Kate Martinez, who stands silently at the back, her military-trained gaze missing nothing. Maria Torres, head of the town council, nods approvingly, though uncertainty flickers across her face. The desperate expressions around her reflect years of struggle, watching their children leave for bigger cities, fighting losing battles against drought and economic decline. The promise of prosperity proves seductive to a community that's been forgotten by progress. Sarah Chen rises from her seat, her voice cutting through the murmurs. What about environmental impact studies? These developments border protected watersheds, including critical water sources for local ranches. She gestures to detailed maps, her concerns backed by years of veterinary expertise. Ramirez's smile never wavers. We've conducted thorough environmental surveys. I assure you, ecological protection is a top priority. His perfectly practiced response carries the smooth assurance of someone used to handling opposition. Like the environmental protection in Sierra Vista, Hawk's deep voice silences the room. Funny how their protected lands became operational. Zones for your corporation 6 months after development began, right around the time the water table started dropping. Tension crackles through the air. Ramirez's eyes narrow slightly, but his composure remains intact. I'm not familiar with that situation, he deflects smoothly. Perhaps we could discuss your concerns privately after the meeting. I'm sure we can address any misunderstandings. Kate observes the exchange, recognizing the tactics. She'd seen similar scenarios play out in villages across Afghanistan and Iraq. Legitimate businesses moving in, making promises, slowly establishing control until it was too late for the local population to resist. Her special forces training had taught her to spot the patterns, the subtle signs of infiltration and manipulation. After the meeting, Sarah catches up with Kate in the parking lot. They're moving fast, she warns, clutching a stack of permits. Building applications are being approved without proper review. Someone's greasing palms at the county level. Money talks, Kate sighs, watching Ramirez chat with council members. Her tactical assessment continues automatically, noting positions, studying faces, identifying potential allies and threats. Old habits from combat zones die hard. Hawk approaches, with Mike Reaper Torres, his second in command. Got word from our contacts down south. Sonora's been buying up border properties through front companies. Same pattern. They start with legitimate businesses, then slowly convert the land for their operations. Kate's jaw tightens as she processes the intelligence. Shadow Creek Ranch sits right where they'd want to move their goods. Remote, multiple access points away from main roads and border patrol routes. Her mind maps the terrain automatically, seeing it through the eyes of someone planning covert operations. They'll try to pressure you, Reaper warns, his voice carrying the weight of experience. Might start small, permit issues, code violations, then it'll escalate. His own family had fled cartel violence in Sonora years ago. He recognizes the playbook. As if on cue, Marco Ramirez approaches their group. Two men flanking him in a practiced formation that Kate's trained eye immediately recognizes as professional security. Ms. Martinez, I hope we can schedule a proper meeting. Your property is crucial to our development plans. Not interested. Kate's response carries the flat finality she once used in combat negotiations. At least consider our offer. Ramirez's smile turns calculating. It would be unfortunate if your ranch faced regulatory challenges. Environmental permits can be so complex, especially for properties bordering protected watersheds. Hawk steps forward, his presence imposing. Careful with threats, friend. They have a way of coming back around. The warning carries extra weight. Coming from a man whose combat experience matches Kate's, Ramirez's smile turns cold, simply expressing concern for proper procedures. Good day, ladies and gentlemen. He retreats with his security detail, their movements confirming Kate's suspicion about their professional training. Later that afternoon, Sarah's truck kicks up dust as she drives toward Shadow Creek Ranch. Something about the development plans bothers her veterinary instinct. The proposed construction zones make no logical sense unless... She slams on her brakes as a black SUV blocks the road. Two men in tactical gear approaching her vehicle. Dr. Chen, one speaks with practiced politeness. Mr. Ramirez would appreciate if you focused on your veterinary practice rather than development. And plans. Accidents happen on mountain roads. At the ranch, Kate notices her cattle's agitation. The herd bunches together, responding to some unseen threat. Dorothy joins her sister at the fence line, both women's military training evident in their alert postures. Remember what Dad used to say about being able to smell trouble on the wind? Dorothy asks, her combat medic's instincts heightened. Kate nods, scanning the ridgelines with practiced ease. Same feeling I used to get before operations went hot. Her hand unconsciously checks the pistol concealed under her ranch jacket. Another habit that never faded after leaving the service. That evening, Hawk gathers his desert wolves at their clubhouse. Maps cover the tables, property records, development plans, surveillance photos. They're moving faster than we thought, he reports. Started buying up properties through shell companies months ago. His finger traces several locations. These wildlife corridors they're planning, perfect smuggling routes, and look where they all lead. The lines on the map converge near Shadow Creek Ranch. Kate studies the pattern, her special forces training kicking in. They're establishing a network, multiple routes, redundant access points, all centralized through remote terrain that's hard to monitor. In her office at Town Hall, Maria Torres stays late reviewing permit applications. Something doesn't add up. The financial records show massive investments, but the source of funds is obscured through layers of corporations. Her phone buzzes with a text from Ramirez. Consider the town's future. Some questions are better left unasked. Dawn breaks over Shadow Creek, painting the desert in gold. Kate approaches her main gate, then freezes. The chain has been cut, replaced with a new one. On the fence hangs a note, "Last chance, Ms. Martinez. Next time we take more than just your lock." Sarah arrives to find Kate on her porch, a well-worn M4 carbine across her lap. Not her grandfather's old rifle, but the weapon she'd carried through countless operations. "They're testing us," Kate says quietly, her voice carrying the calm. Focus her teammates had learned to trust in combat, seeing how we'll react. "The threats aren't just aimed at you," Sarah replies, showing Kate the photos of her vehicle being blocked. "They're targeting anyone who questions their plans." Hawk's motorcycle roars up the drive, followed by several others. "Got news. They're moving supplies through their construction sites. building materials arriving at night, leaving empty. Setting up their operation before they even have approval. Kate growls in frustration. That's not all, Hawk continues. They've hired local muscle. Some of our own neighbors are working for them now. The weight of betrayal settles over them as they realize Shadow Creek is dividing, neighbor against neighbor. As Ramirez's influence spreads, the wind picks up, carrying dust across Shadow Creek Ranch. Kate walks her property line, noting fresh tire tracks, broken branches, signs of surveillance. In town, Maria Torres makes copies of suspicious documents, her hands shaking. At the veterinary clinic, Sarah locks away her records, knowing they might be targeted next. Kate's words carry on the wind as she checks her defensive positions. This land, this town, they're all we've got, and some things are worth fighting for. Her special forces training has taught her to prepare for the worst while working to prevent it. The battle lines are drawn, but no one can predict how far either side will go to win. The first punch comes without warning. Reaper hits the pavement outside Morgan's diner, blood trickling from his split lip. 3 of Ramirez's men loom over him, their stance revealing professional combat training. "Stay out of cartel business," one warns, his accent pure American, mercenary rather than Mexican. Hawk and 2 other desert wolves rush from their bikes, but the attackers retreat to their black SUV, tires squealing as they disappear down Main Street. Sheriff Davidson arrives minutes later, notebook in hand, but his questions seem rehearsed, disinterested. Couldn't get a good look at them. Reaper wipes blood from his chin. But we all know who they work for. His eyes meet Kate's as she helps him up, both recognizing the calculated nature of the attack. The sheriff's response is measured, politically careful. "Without evidence, there's not much I can do. Maybe you boys should focus on your own business." His gaze deliberately avoids Kate's cold stare as he walks away. Hawk watches Davidson retreat, then turns to his crew. They're getting bold. Time to push back. The desert wolves gather around, their military experience evident in how they automatically form a defensive perimeter while discussing strategy. At the veterinary clinic, Sarah sorts through paperwork when she notices something odd. The construction company's environmental impact reports are identical to ones she's seen before. Word for word, just with dates and locations changed. Her hands shake as she makes copies, realizing what this means. Her phone buzzes with a text. From an unknown number, the smart veterinarian focuses on animals, not paperwork. Kate spends her morning reinforcing defensive positions around the ranch, her special forces training guiding every decision. Security cameras go up at strategic points, covering approaches and blind spots. Motion sensors provided by Hawks. Crew get placed along likely infiltration routes. Dorothy arrives with supplies and intelligence. Maria Torres came by the store today. She's been digging into Southwest Agricultural's finances, says their records don't add up. Shell companies within shell companies, all leading back to ghost corporations in Mexico. She's playing a dangerous game, Kate responds, testing a new lock. These people don't take kindly to questions. She remembers similar patterns from tracking terrorist financing in Afghanistan, layers of legitimate business hiding darker operations. At Town Hall, Maria sits alone in her office, examining documents spread across her desk. Property deeds, bank statements, construction permits, all pointing to something sinister. A shadow crosses her window, and she quickly shuffles the papers away. Marco Ramirez enters without knocking, 2 security men positioning themselves. Outside her door. "Working late, Ms. Torres? Dedication like yours deserves recognition. Perhaps a position in our new administrative structure." His smile carries veiled threat rather than warmth. "Just routine paperwork." She keeps her voice steady. "Nothing interesting. Good." His smile doesn't reach his eyes. "It would be unfortunate if your son lost his new job with our construction crew. Times are tough for young families. After he leaves, Maria's hands tremble as she reaches for her phone, dialing Sarah's number. The pieces are falling into place, painting a picture no one wants to see. Meanwhile, Hawk meets with his desert wolves at their clubhouse. Maps and surveillance photos cover the walls, showing a pattern of cartel activity that's been months in the making. They're moving supplies through these construction sites, he points to marked locations. But that's not their endgame. These routes all lead to one place. Kate studies the convergence points around Shadow Creek Ranch, perfect corridor for their operation. Remote, easily controlled, multiple escape routes. Her tactical assessment continues automatically, years of special forces training kicking in. And once they establish control, who's going to look too closely at a private ranch with armed security? Sarah arrives with her findings, laying out the forged environmental reports. They copied documents from other projects, just changed the dates and locations. If we can prove this, won't matter, Hawk interrupts. Sheriff's in their pocket. Saw him having dinner with Ramirez last night at the steakhouse. Real friendly conversation. Outside Shadow Creek Ranch, 2 desert wolves. Maintain constant watch, veterans switching every few hours. They note every vehicle that passes, every unusual movement. Dr. James Wilson's car pulls up to the ranch. The town physician has been Kate's friend since she returned from her last deployment. Thought I'd check on you, he says, as Kate leads him to the porch, words spreading about Reaper getting jumped. This isn't going to stay contained much longer. The hospital board met yesterday, Wilson continues quietly. Ramirez's company is offering to build a new wing. Most of the board's ready to sign on. Those who opposed it found their practices being investigated for violations. Kate watches. Her cattle bunched together near the ranch house, their behavior showing clear signs of stress. Wilson follows her gaze. You're not going to back down, are you? This was my grandfather's land, Kate responds, her voice carrying quiet steel. He chose this place after Vietnam, built it from nothing. Said the mountains reminded him of where he fought, but here he could build something good instead of destroying. I'm not letting them take that legacy. A drone appears overhead, hovering just outside rifle range. Kate's hand moves toward her weapon, but Wilson stops her. That's what they want. Give them an excuse. The drone disappears over the trees, but the message is clear. They're being watched. At the gas station, Hawk fills his bike when a new SUV pulls up. The window rolls down, revealing Marco Ramirez. Unfortunate business this morning, he says, smoothly. Hotheads sometimes need cooling off. Keep pushing, Hawk's voice carries deadly calm. See what happens. Such hostility, Ramirez smiles. We're bringing prosperity to Shadow Creek. Why resist progress? Seen your kind of progress. Before in Afghanistan, Iraq, Hawk responds. Different uniforms, same tactics. We're businessmen, Mr. Hawkins, but business requires cooperation. Perhaps your friend Ms. Martinez needs help understanding that. Hawk's hand tightens on the gas pump. Touch that woman. You'll learn about different tactics. She's not just any rancher you can intimidate. Evening settles over Shadow Creek, bringing no relief from the tension. Sarah compiles her evidence in a secure email, sending copies to multiple accounts. Maria Torres does the same with her documents, adding photos of secret meetings and financial records. At the ranch, Kate checks her defensive positions as darkness falls. Dorothy brings coffee to the desert wolves watching the property. They'll come at night, she says, her combat medic's experience showing, when they think we're not ready. That's the thing about veterans, one rider responds, checking his concealed weapon. We're always ready. A mile away, in an unmarked van, men check weapons and review satellite images of the ranch. Ramirez's orders are clear. Apply pressure, break resistance, secure the land. The cartel needs its smuggling corridor established before winter. Kate walks her perimeter one last time, her night vision goggles revealing signs of surveillance she knows most people would miss. Her satellite phone buzzes. A secure message. From her old Special Forces team, they're monitoring the situation, ready to assist if needed. Some bonds forged in combat never break. The desert wind carries dust and whispered threats across Shadow Creek. Her cattle bunch together, sensing the approaching danger. The night holds its breath, waiting to see who will make the first move in a game where the stakes keep rising, and mercy is becoming a luxury no one can afford. Midnight at Shadow Creek Ranch brings no peace. The attack begins with precision. 3 black SUVs approaching from different directions, their lights off. Kate spots them through her night vision. Goggles, their movement patterns confirming her suspicions about their professional training. They're coming in from all sides. Kate's voice carries quiet command over the encrypted radio. At least 12 men moving in tactical formation. These aren't cartel thugs, they're private military contractors. Her Special Forces experience recognizes the telltale signs of fellow professionals. Dorothy positions herself at the barn's upper window, her combat medic's steady hands holding a scoped rifle. The Desert Wolves maintain their defensive positions, veterans whose time in Afghanistan and Iraq taught them how to handle night operations. The first shot isn't a bullet, but a warning. A flare arcing over the ranch house, illuminating the property in harsh red light. A voice carries across the darkness, professionally modulated. Ms. Martinez, be reasonable. This property will be acquired one way or another. Don't risk anyone getting hurt over a business transaction. Kate's response comes in the form of a warning shot, kicking up dirt near the speaker's feet. The night erupts into chaos. The attackers employ professional tactics, coordinated movement, covering fire, attempted flanking maneuvers. But Kate's defensive preparations prove effective, her years of Special Forces training evident in how she's prepared the battlefield. Hawk's Desert Wolves emerge from concealed positions, using their motorcycles' engines to disorient and confuse. Headlights flash on suddenly, exposing the intruders. 2 men in tactical gear retreat, cursing as they realize they're facing fellow combat veterans rather than simple ranchers. "Sheriff's Department, stand down!" Davidson's voice cuts through. The noise as patrol cars appear, lights flashing. But they make no move to stop Ramirez's men, instead focusing on the Desert Wolves. Sarah, watching from her hidden position, films everything on her phone. "Got you now, Davidson," she whispers, documenting the sheriff's selective law enforcement. The ranch house becomes the focal point as 3 attackers with professional gear attempt to breach the front door. Kate's voice carries over the radio, calm and focused. "Dorothy, shift your fire left. Hawk, they're trying to flank through the cattle. Penn, the coordination between Kate, Dorothy, and the Desert Wolves shows years of combat experience. They control the engagement, forcing the attackers to react rather than execute their plan." "Last chance, Martinez," one of Ramirez's men shouts. "Next time, we won't be so nice." "Check your 6, tough guy." Hawk's voice rises above the chaos. As 5 motorcycles roar out of the darkness, their riders experts in the art of controlled chaos. The cartel's men scatter, their formation broken by veterans who understand how to disrupt professional units. "This is an illegal gathering," Davidson announces through his megaphone. "Disperse immediately." "Funny," Kate responds, her voice carrying across the property. "You weren't concerned about the armed men trying to take my ranch." Her words carry the weight of command, learned through years of leading Special Forces operations. The attack deteriorates into a stalemate as Ramirez's men face unexpected resistance. Sheriff Davidson approaches the ranch house, his expression carefully neutral. "You're interfering with a legal business inspection," he states flatly. Kate stands her ground, combat rifle held ready but pointed down. "Since when do business inspections require armed men and night vision gear at midnight?" Her Special Forces training helps her maintain calm, even as adrenaline floods her system. This incident will be reported, Davidson warns. Your ranch permits could be in jeopardy. Everything's been documented. Hawk joins Kate, his own military bearing evident. Including your deputies watching armed men try to seize private property? Wonder how that'll play with the state police. Dawn approaches as the last vehicles leave the ranch. The cost becomes clear in the growing light. Damaged fences, torn equipment, spent ammunition casings littering the ground. Sarah emerges from her hiding spot. Medical bag ready. Anyone hit? Few grazes, Dorothy reports, her combat medic skills already at work. Nothing serious. They were trying to intimidate, not kill. Not yet. Kate surveys the damage, her tactical mind already planning improvements to their defenses. They'll be back. This was just a test, probing our defenses, checking our capabilities. At his office in town, Ramirez receives the night's report. His face remains impassive, but his knuckles whiten as he grips his desk. The woman has more support than we anticipated, and she's not just any rancher. Her response to the attack was too professional. Change of strategy, he orders. His lieutenant nods, understanding the implications. What about the veterinarian? She was filming everything. Ramirez's smile turns cold. Accidents happen in rural areas. Kate spends the morning reinforcing defensive positions, her military experience guiding every decision. Sarah arrives with supplies and news. 3 other ranches were visited last night, she reports. While everyone was focused here, Ramirez's men were delivering messages. The Anderson place, the Wilson farm, even the Torres family's land. Divide and conquer. Kate growls, recognizing the classic tactic. Split the community, isolate the resistance, then pick us off one by one. The desert wolves maintain their watch, but exhaustion shows on their faces. We can't keep this up forever, Reaper admits, cleaning his weapon with practiced efficiency. They have more resources, more men. Then we change the game, Hawk responds. Maria's evidence, Sarah's videos. We build our case, make it too public, for them to hide. A truck appears on the road, slowing as it passes. The driver tosses something from the window. Kate approaches cautiously, then freezes. It's a photo taken with a telephoto lens, showing her during her morning run, crosshairs superimposed over her image. Written across it in red. Everyone has to sleep sometime. The morning sun offers no warmth as Kate stares at the photo. The ranch house, Dorothy coordinates with their old military contacts, calling in favors earned through years of service. The battle for Shadow Creek has shifted from physical confrontation to psychological warfare, and the stakes keep rising. They think threats will make us back down, Dorothy says, her voice carrying the same steel as her sister's. They don't know our family or our friends. Hawk adds his own certainty, his riders nodding in agreement. They don't understand what they're dealing with. This isn't just about land anymore. It's about standing up to people who think they can take whatever they want. The wind carries dust across the ranch, and with it the certainty that the next confrontation will be decisive. The cartel has shown its hand. Now it's time for Shadow Creek to show its heart. Kate Martinez didn't survive a decade in special forces by backing down from threats. She survived by being smarter, tougher, and more determined than her opponents. And now, as she watches the sun climb over mountains her grandfather chose after his own war, she makes a decision. The cartel thinks they're dealing with a simple female rancher. It's time to show them exactly who they're really facing. A woman who spent years conducting operations that officially never happened, leading teams in places that officially didn't exist. The wind shifts, carrying the scent of rain. A storm is coming to Shadow Creek, but not the kind that shows up on weather reports. The kind that reminds everyone why you don't threaten someone who spent their career being the thing bad people feared in the dark. Shadow Creek's veterinary clinic lies dark and silent in the early morning hours when the first brick shatters the front window. Sarah rushes from the back room where she'd been working late, only to find her medical cabinets ransacked and equipment destroyed. Spray painted across her wall in red. "Mind your own business." Her hands shake as she calls Kate, but her voice remains steady. They hit the clinic, made it look like vandalism. Within minutes, motorcycles rumble in the parking lot. Hawk surveys the damage, his expression grim. "You're not staying here alone anymore. Reaper, get her to the ranch." "My patients need me," Sarah protests, gathering what supplies she can salvage. "Can't help them if you're dead," Reaper responds, leading her to his bike. The implied threat hangs heavy in the air. This isn't random vandalism, but a calculated escalation. Across town, Maria Torres slips a USB drive into her purse, her office dark except for the glow of her computer screen. The files she's discovered paint a disturbing picture: shell companies, money laundering, and construction plans that make no sense unless viewed through the lens of illegal trafficking. A floorboard creaks behind her. Maria freezes, then slowly turns. Marco Ramirez stands in her doorway, his smile cold in the dim light. "Working late again, Ms. Torres. Such dedication. Just catching up on paperwork." She keeps her voice neutral, though the USB drive feels like it's burning through. A purse. "Nothing interesting." "Really?" "Because our security team noticed some unusual access to restricted files." Before he can move closer, motorcycle engines roar to life in the parking lot. The desert wolves haven't left Maria unprotected. Kate watches, her cattle from the ranch house porch, noting how their behavior has changed since the night attack. They bunch together defensively, responding to the constant tension in the air. Dorothy sorts through papers at the kitchen table. Property taxes suddenly tripled, surprise inspection fees, new permit requirements. They're trying to drown us. In paperwork and expenses, Dorothy observes, her combat medic's precision evident in how she organizes the documents. They're doing it to everyone who stands with us. Anderson's feed store got hit with health code violations, Kate responds, checking the feeds from their new security cameras. Wilson's farm is facing water rights challenges. They're isolating anyone who resists. Sarah arrives at the ranch, still shaking from the clinic attack. They're escalating. "This isn't just about your land anymore, Kate. They want to make an example of anyone who defies them." The desert wolves maintain their watch, but fatigue shows. They've been running protection for too many people, stretched thin across too many locations. Reaper radios in from his patrol, reporting movement at the old Miller property, trucks coming in at night, leaving before dawn. A truck speeds past the ranch, shots ringing out. Everyone hits the ground as bullets pepper the front porch. When the dust settles, they find one of Hawk's riders clutching his arm, blood seeping between his fingers. Dr. Wilson arrives to treat the wound, his face grave. Hospital board voted today. Full support for Southwest Agricultural's new medical center. Anyone who opposed it got their privileges suspended. Maria arrives with her discoveries, laying out documents on Kate's kitchen table. "It's worse than we thought. The construction plans, the property purchases, they're creating a corridor. Shadow Creek Ranch would be their crown jewel." "Think about it." Hawk joins them, studying the maps. "Who's going to look too closely at a secure compound with armed security? Perfect place to store things, or people, before moving them across the border." Sarah spreads out her own findings. The environmental surveys, the permits, all forgeries. But Davidson won't touch it. He's buried too deep in their pockets. Outside, Kate's satellite phone buzzes, a message from her old Special Forces team. They've been monitoring cartel chatter, and something big is brewing. Los Sonora is moving. "Major resources to the border," her former teammate warns. "Whatever they're planning, it's big." Reaper bursts in, holding paperwork found in the Miller property trash. "Construction plans. but not the ones they showed the town council. These show underground structures, secure rooms, not just a smuggling route. They're building a hub. Hawk studies the papers, his military experience reading between the lines. Drugs, weapons, human trafficking, everything would flow through Shadow Creek. Kate walks to her porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains. Her grandfather chose after his own war. 3 generations of Martinez family history stand on these acres. Her father always said they weren't just owners, but guardians of this land. They'll come at us with everything now. Hawk joins her. No more games. Then let them come, Kate responds, her voice carrying the quiet confidence that made her legendary among her Special Forces teammates. Some things are worth any price. A vehicle approaches slowly, headlights off. The desert wolves move to defensive positions, but it's Anderson from the feed store. They pulled my business license today, his voice shakes. But I ain't backing down. Brought you 3 months of cattle feed, no charge. More vehicles arrive. Wilson, other ranchers, business owners. Each brings something, supplies, food, ammunition. Shadow Creek's old guard making their stand. They think they can isolate us, Dorothy observes, watching the impromptu gathering. They don't understand community. Kate receives another encrypted message from her former team. The cartel's movement isn't just about Shadow Creek. They're positioning resources for a major push into the territory. The ranch would be their forward operating base, controlling key routes through the mountains. Some things you can't fight alone, Sarah says softly, watching the townspeople gather at the ranch. Even Special Forces operators need backup sometimes. The night wind carries dust across Shadow Creek, and with it, the resolve of people who've decided enough is enough. In his office, Ramirez makes calls, his mask of civility finally dropping. Bring in everyone, he orders. It's time to show this town what happens to those who resist progress. Kate checks her weapons with practiced efficiency. The movement's automatic after years of combat operations. The cartel thinks they're facing a simple female rancher. Time to show them they're actually facing someone who spent a decade being the thing cartels feared in the dark. Dorothy coordinates with their old military contacts, teams they served with, operators who owe them favors. The storm gathering over Shadow Creek isn't just about one ranch or one town. It's about drawing a line, showing that some places can't be bought, some people can't be broken. The wind carries dust and whispered warnings across Shadow Creek. In town, Ramirez's men prepare for what they think will be a simple show of force. They don't understand they're about to face someone who made a career of turning the hunters into the hunted. The night grows deeper, but Shadow Creek remains awake, preparing for what everyone knows will be the decisive confrontation. Sometimes standing your ground isn't a choice. It's the only way to live with yourself when everything you love is at stake. The name El Escorpión spreads through Shadow Creek like a chill wind. Hawk gathers the town's defenders in the ranch house, his face grave as he shares intelligence. Miguel El Escorpión Vargas, he points to a grainy photo of a lean, scarred man. Ex-Mexican Special Forces turned cartel enforcer. Specializes in making problems disappear, not just people, but entire communities. Kate studies the image, her Special Forces training recognizing a fellow professional. How many men with him? The tactical assessment begins automatically. Muscle memory from years of combat operations. At least 30 operators, all ex-military or private contractors. They're staging at the Miller Ranch, 20 miles south, Hawk reports, spreading satellite images across the kitchen table. The photos show vehicles and equipment being positioned with military precision. Sarah interrupts with urgent news, just intercepted from her contacts at the county office. Just decoded their communications. They're not just coming for the ranch. They want to make an example of Shadow Creek, show other border towns the price of resistance. The meeting turns somber as Hawk outlines El Escorpion's typical tactics. He'll hit infrastructure first, power, water, communications, isolate us completely. Then he'll start taking people one by one until the community breaks. Dorothy spreads a map across the table, marking potential evacuation routes. I've marked safe houses for the wounded, hospitals compromised, but we've set up 3 backup medical stations. Her combat medic experience guides the planning. Roads will be the first thing they control. Kate analyzes the terrain. We need to establish alternate supply lines through the mountains. Her finger traces old hunting trails and forgotten paths. Through the rugged landscape, Anderson arrives with more intelligence from his sources in town. They're setting up something big at the old mining site. Heavy equipment, chemical tanks, something they don't want anyone to see. Maria receives an encrypted message from her state police contact that makes her pale. El Escorpion's received direct orders from the cartel leadership. He has 48 hours to end this, or they'll replace him with someone worse. Desperate men make mistakes, Hawk notes, but his face shows concern. Problem is, they also stop caring about collateral damage. The town's defenders work frantically to prepare. Dorothy coordinates evacuation plans for the most vulnerable residents. Sarah develops contingency plans for emergency medical care. The desert wolves fortify key positions around Shadow Creek. Kate stands on her porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold. The same mountains her grandfather chose after Vietnam, saying they reminded him of places he fought to protect. Freedom. Now she faces her own fight for freedom on the same ground. El Escorpion's forces begin systematic destruction of Shadow Creek's surroundings. Precise explosions target infrastructure, while chemical agents render farmland unusable. The message is clear: surrender or lose everything. He's not trying to take the town anymore, Hawk realizes, watching smoke rise from another destroyed power transformer. He's trying to erase it. Reaper reports more troubling news from his reconnaissance. The weapons at the mining site. They're planning something big, some kind of mass dispersal system, could render the whole valley uninhabitable. Can see. We stop it? Kate asks, her military mind already calculating approaches and angles of attack. Not without help. Hawk studies the mining site plans. We need those state police units we were promised. Sarah works desperately to protect the town's water supply, testing for contamination and developing filtration systems. If they poison the aquifer, it doesn't matter if we win. The land becomes useless. A truck appears on the road, slowing as it passes the ranch. The driver tosses something that lands near Kate's feet. A photo of her grandfather's grave, freshly desecrated. Written across it in red, "The dead can't protect their land." They're escalating the psychological warfare, Dorothy observes, her own combat experience recognizing the tactics. Trying to break our will before the main assault. Maria decodes more intercepted communications, her hands shaking. The mining site operation. They're planning to use industrial chemicals, enough to make Shadow Creek uninhabitable for months. They'll blame it on an industrial accident. Kate receives an encrypted message from her old Special Forces team. They've been monitoring cartel communications, tracking resource movements. They're burning their legitimate businesses, her former teammate warns. No more pretense of legal operations. Whatever comes next will be pure violence. In his command center at the mining site, El Escorpion reviews thermal imaging of Shadow Creek Ranch. His face shows professional appreciation as he studies the defensive preparations. The woman knows her craft, he observes to his lieutenant. Ex-military? Special Forces, the lieutenant confirms, but that won't save her or the town. The chemicals arrive tonight. El Escorpion's final warning comes over hijacked radio frequencies. You chose this. Everything that happens now is on your heads. His voice carries the cold certainty of a man who's erased communities before. The town faces its darkest hour. Chemical weapons that could destroy their home forever, professional killers with nothing left to lose, and time running out for any hope of outside help. Kate looks at the gathering defenders, ranchers, veterans, townspeople united by something stronger than fear. They think destroying the land will break us, she says, her voice carrying the quiet authority that once led Special Forces teams through impossible missions. They don't understand that the land is us. Hawk gathers his desert wolves for what could be their final mission. We've got one shot at those chemical weapons. After that, he leaves the sentence unfinished. After that, Kate finishes, we show them what it really means to defend your home. Her hand unconsciously touches the Special Forces insignia she still carries, a reminder of lessons learned in other mountains, other battles. The wind carries poison and promise across Shadow Creek as night falls. El Escorpion thinks he's forcing a town's surrender. Instead, he's about to learn why some battles can't be won with weapons alone, because some bonds run deeper than fear, and some choices matter more than survival. Kate checks her gear one last time, muscle memory from countless combat operations taking over. The cartel thinks they're dealing with a vulnerable female rancher. Time to remind them why Special Forces operators earned their reputation, not through strength alone, but through turning disadvantages into decisive victories. The night deepens over Shadow Creek, but few sleep. In the darkness, defenders move into position, guided by Kate's tactical experience and local knowledge. El Escorpion brings death to this mountain town, but he'll find something waiting that no amount of professional training can prepare him for. The unbreakable spirit of people defending their home, led by a woman who spent her career being the nightmare that haunted cartel operators' dreams. The old mining site lies silent under starlight, its abandoned structures telling stories of better days. The desert wolves move like shadows through the darkness, approaching the chemical weapons staging area. Kate's combat instincts have already mapped guard positions and patrol patterns. Professionals, but predictable in their military precision. 12 minutes until they start deployment. Maria's voice whispers through encrypted radios. Winds shifting north. Once they release those chemicals... She doesn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone knows what's at stake. Kate moves through the darkness, her Special Forces training making her nearly invisible despite the open terrain. Sarah monitors from her position, ready with emergency medical response. Remember, any exposure to those agents means immediate treatment. We won't get second chances. Hawk's voice comes low and urgent. 3 technical vehicles at the north, and heavy weapons mounted. El Escorpion's personal security detail. His military experience reads the deployment for what it is, a professional security cordon. Kate suddenly freezes, years of combat instinct screaming a warning. Seconds later, they hear it, the subtle whine of drones overhead, El Escorpion's eyes in the sky, searching for approaching threats. He's not taking chances, Reaper observes. Full professional security setup. Through her night vision goggles, Kate watches the patrol patterns, noting how they've positioned their forces. Look at their deployment, she radios to Hawk. They're too spread out on the east side, overconfident. Maria quickly checks her intelligence. That's it, she realizes. The actual control center is in the old processing building. The visible storage is a decoy. Her analysis confirms what Kate's tactical assessment already suspected. Classic misdirection, Kate responds. Reaper, take your team east. Anderson, bring your people up through the drainage culvert. Her commands come with the quiet authority that once guided Special Forces missions in far darker places. The first phase goes perfectly. Teams disable perimeter security without raising alarms. But then everything changes. A floodlight blast cuts through the darkness. Intruder alert at the north fence. El Escorpion's voice carries across their captured radio frequencies. All units respond. He knew we were coming. Hawk recognizes the trap. Used our own tactics against us. No. Kate watches the response. Pattern. He knew we'd figure out the decoy. This response is too perfect. Her years of combat experience read between the lines of the enemy's movements. Sarah's voice comes urgent over the radio. The chemical deployment, it's starting. They're using the alert as cover. The wind carries a faint, acrid scent that confirms her warning. Everyone mask up, Hawk orders. Kate, get your team clear. But Kate sees what others don't. The dispersal system isn't where they expected. Her tactical eye traces the infrastructure, seeing the real threat. The drainage system, she realizes. They're using the old mine shafts to spread the chemicals underground. They'll contaminate the entire water table. Her voice carries the calm focus that her Special Forces teammates had learned meant she'd seen the solution others missed. 2 minutes to deployment. They find the actual control center hidden in an underground maintenance room. El Escorpion himself stands by the activation controls, his professional demeanor showing only mild surprise at their penetration of his security. Impressive, he admits, weapon raised. Using local knowledge against us, but you're too late. His accent carries the refined edge of someone who learned English in military schools rather than on the streets. Are we? Kate steps forward, her own weapon held ready. You studied this town, learned our weaknesses. Did you ever wonder about our strengths? Her Special Forces training reads his positioning, noting the subtle tells of a fellow professional. Your reputation's already ruined, Kate continues. The cartel knows you failed. Now you have a choice. Die here, trying to save your pride, or live with knowing a woman outsmarted you. Her words carry the weight of someone who's faced similar choices in other battles. The moment stretches, filled with deadly possibility. Then Sarah triggers the ranch's backup generators. The sudden power surge overloads the mining site's electrical system, destroying the chemical deployment controls that cost millions to develop. Central control disabled, Maria confirms over the radio. The whole system's dead. Her voice carries the satisfaction of someone who spent weeks planning this moment. Outside, the night erupts into chaos. El Escorpion's men, realizing their leader is cornered, begin to break ranks. Some surrender, others flee into darkness. The desert wolves secure the perimeter, veterans handling the aftermath with practiced efficiency. You don't understand. El Escorpion addresses Kate, his professional facade crumbling. The cartel won't stop. They'll send someone else, someone worse. Let them come, Kate responds, securing his weapons with practiced ease. We'll be ready. Her voice carries the quiet confidence of someone who spent a career being the thing cartels feared in the dark. The night wind carries hope across Shadow Creek, and with it, the certainty that something profound has changed. A town has discovered its strength, a community has proven its worth, and the bond between them has become unbreakable. Dawn breaks over Shadow Creek as state police finally arrive, finding El Escorpion and his core team secured in the old mining site's maintenance shed. Kate maintains her vigilance, watching prisoners with unwavering attention while the desert wolves process the scene. 19 high-level cartel operators, Hawk reports, plus El Escorpion himself, biggest single capture in border state history. His voice carries professional appreciation for an operation well executed. Sarah moves among the wounded, treating both defenders and prisoners. Chemical exposure was minimal, she reports. We stopped it in time. The sunrise offers no warmth. As Kate surveys the scene, El Escorpion's capture exposed corruption networks in 3 states. The cartel's entire northern operation lies in ruins, their careful plans shattered by a town that refused to break. Los Sonora won't take this lying down, Maria warns, monitoring cartel communications. Their entire northern operations are compromised. El Escorpion knew too much. Her words carry the weight of certainty, as if confirming her warning, intercepted messages begin flooding their channels. Cartel leadership mobilizing resources, calling in favors, preparing a response that threatens to dwarf their previous efforts. They're burning their legitimate businesses, Hawk observes. No more pretense of legal operations. Whatever comes next will be pure violence. His military experience reads between the lines of the intercepted communications. Kate watches the sunrise paint the mountains gold, the same mountains her grandfather chose after his war. The battle for Shadow Creek has shifted from defensive land to something larger, a test of whether one community's spirit can stand against an empire. Built on fear, the wind carries dust across the ranch, and with it the certainty that while they've won this battle, the war for Shadow Creek's soul is far from over. But Kate Martinez didn't survive a decade in Special Forces by backing down from impossible odds. She survived by being smarter, tougher, and more determined than her opponents. And now, as she watches her community stand together in the growing light, she knows some fights are worth any price, because some bonds can't be broken by force or fear, forged in moments of choice and sacrifice that remind everyone why you don't threaten someone who spent their career being the thing bad people feared in the dark. Los Sonora strikes at midnight, their assault beginning with an artillery barrage that lights up the mountain sky. Shadow Creek's defenders huddle in reinforced positions as explosions walk across the town's perimeter. Multiple breach points. Kate's voice carries over encrypted channels, calm and focused despite the chaos. They're coming from all sides. Just counted 4 technical vehicles on the North Road, Reaper reports. Heavy weapons mounted, professional crews. His combat experience reads the threat assessment with practiced ease. Kate watches from her position as cartel forces advance with military precision. This isn't a gang attack, it's a professional army bent on erasing Shadow Creek from existence. They're targeting infrastructure first, Maria warns from her monitoring station. Power stations, water towers, communication hubs, standard scorched. Earth tactics. Sarah coordinates from her underground medical station, casualties already coming in. Running low on blood supplies and antibiotics, she reports, her hands steady as she works. The Desert Wolves maintain defensive positions, veterans whose time in Afghanistan and Iraq prepared them for nights like this. The ranch house becomes a focal point as 3 teams of attackers attempt to breach the perimeter. Kate's voice carries over the radio, guiding her defenders with the precision that made her legendary in Special Forces. Dorothy, shift your fire left. Hawk, they're trying to flank through the cattle pens. The coordination between Kate, Dorothy, and the desert. Wolves shows years of combat experience. They control the engagement, forcing the attackers to react rather than execute their plan. Last chance, Martinez, one of the cartel's commanders shouts. Next time we bring the whole mountain down. Check your 6, professional, Hawk's voice rises above the chaos as 5 motorcycles roar out of the darkness, their riders experts in the art of controlled chaos. The cartel's men scatter, their formation broken by veterans who understand how to disrupt professional units. Sheriff's Department, stand down. Davidson's voice cuts through the noise as patrol cars appear, lights flashing. But this time, something's different. The deputies turn their lights on the cartel forces, not the defenders. Davidson himself approaches Kate's position. Got some state police backup finally, he says, his voice carrying regret and determination. Couldn't live with myself, letting them destroy this town. His deputies take up defensive positions, finally choosing their community over cartel bribes. The assault intensifies as Los Sonora commits more forces. Helicopters appear overhead, their spotlights cutting through smoke and darkness. Professional. Mercenaries deploy from fast ropes, bringing more firepower to bear. They're not just trying to defeat us, Hawk realizes. They're trying to make sure no town ever resists again. Kate's response to the escalating threat proves remarkable. Years of Special Forces training guide every decision, every movement. She coordinates the defense with the precision that once made her unit the go-to team for impossible missions. Maria intercepts critical intelligence from her monitoring position. They're following El Escorpion's playbook, trying to break our will before the final push. But Shadow Creek refuses to break. Every citizen becomes a defender, every home a fortress. The town's unity proves stronger than Los Sonora's military might. West barricades failing, Anderson reports through bursts of gunfire. They're breaking through. Kate leads the response personally, her combat rifle speaking with deadly accuracy. Cartel forces retreat in panic, their professional discipline shattered by unexpected resistance. They didn't expect this kind of fight, Hawk observes, reloading behind a reinforced position. Their intelligence said we'd break easily. His veteran's eye recognizes the frustration in the enemy's tactics. Sarah works frantically in her medical station, treating wounds that would overwhelm a major hospital. Something's wrong with their ammunition, she notes, examining a casualty. Wounds are worse than normal. Maria confirms this observation from her intelligence post. They're using specialized rounds designed to maximize damage. This isn't about winning anymore, it's about punishment. Her voice carries the weight of someone who's seen too much cartel violence. The battle reaches a crescendo as Los Sonora commits their reserve forces. Fresh troops and vehicles pour into Shadow Creek, testing every defensive position. Can't hold much longer, Hawk warns. Too many fronts, too many casualties. But then something unexpected happens. Local law enforcement from neighboring counties arrives, having heard about Shadow Creek's stand. They choose to help their neighbors rather than bow to cartel influence. "Cavalry's here!" Dorothy calls out, spotting the approaching vehicles. Kate coordinates the combined defense with professional skill, integrating the new reinforcements into their strategy. Her Special Forces experience proves invaluable in organizing disparate groups into an effective fighting force. Los Sonora's command channel crackles with orders. No survivors, no witnesses, no mercy. The night fills with chaos as Shadow Creek faces its greatest test. Kate's voice carries over the defensive network. Remember why we're fighting. This isn't just about land. It's about showing them they can't own everything. They're bringing up their heavy artillery, Maria reports, her voice tight with concern. They'll level the entire town. The cartel's frustration at unexpected resistance manifests in escalating violence. Then we make our stand here, Kate responds, her voice carrying the quiet confidence that once guided Special Forces teams through impossible missions. Together, the wind carries smoke and defiance across Shadow Creek as dawn approaches. Los Sonora thinks they're about to erase a town that dared to resist. Instead, they're about to learn why some places can't be destroyed. Because the spirit defending them comes not just from weapons or walls, but from the unbreakable bonds between those who choose to stand together. Kate coordinates with Hawk as the cartel's artillery moves into position. Her tactical mind, honed through years of special operations, sees the pattern in their deployment. They're bunching their heavy weapons too close together, she observes. Overconfident, 10 minutes. Before they're ready to level everything, Maria warns from her monitoring station. The defenders fall back to their final positions, rallying around the ranch house, where Sarah treats the wounded. But then Kate's satellite phone buzzes, a message from her old Special Forces team. They've been monitoring the situation, and help is closer than anyone realized. "Cavalry's coming," she announces over the tactical net. Real cavalry this time. The sound of approaching helicopters cuts through the night. Not cartel aircraft, but military. Kate's former teammates, calling in favors earned through years of service, have brought serious backup. National Guard units responding to evidence of cartel artillery being used on U.S. soil arrive with overwhelming force. Los Sonora's forces, suddenly facing military helicopters and armored vehicles, begin to break. Their professional discipline crumbles as they realize they're caught between determined town defenders and serious military hardware. This is the National Guard. A voice booms across the battlefield. All non-law enforcement personnel, lay down your weapons immediately. The cartel's carefully planned operation dissolves into chaos as their forces scatter. Dawn breaks over Shadow Creek, revealing the night's devastation. Buildings show damage, streets lie cratered, but the town stands undefeated. Kate watches from her porch as National Guard units secure the area, rounding up cartel forces that didn't manage to flee. Never thought I'd see the day. Hawk joins her, cleaning his weapon with practiced efficiency. A whole town standing up to Los Sonora and winning. His voice carries pride and amazement at what they've accomplished. Sarah emerges from her medical station, exhausted but satisfied. Lost some buildings, she reports, but didn't lose a single person. Communities stronger than ever. The victory carries a price in property damage, but Shadow Creek's spirit remains unbroken. The wind shifts, carrying the promise of rain. A storm approaches, but not the kind that shows up on weather reports. The kind that reminds everyone why you don't threaten someone who spent their career being the thing bad people. Feared in the dark, 3 months after Los Sonora's defeat, Shadow Creek blooms with new life. Buildings rise from ruins, streets fill with returning families, and at the heart of it all, the Martinez Ranch stands renewed. Kate's victory becomes the town's shared triumph, marking progress with each rebuilt structure. Never seen anything like it, Sarah tells Kate, checking medical supplies in her newly rebuilt clinic. The community didn't just survive, it transformed. The veterinarian's practice has become a symbol of resilience, rising stronger from the ashes of cartel violence. Towns changing, Hawk observes from Kate's rebuilt porch. Los Sonora's defeat sparked something bigger than us. His desert wolves have established a permanent presence, converting the old warehouse into their clubhouse. Some places choose you, he explains. Some battles never really end. Maria arrives with latest intelligence. Her position as town council had now focused on rebuilding rather than resistance. Cartel operations collapsing across 3 states, she reports, spreading documents across Kate's kitchen table. El Escorpion's capture exposed their entire network. Federal task force is moving systematically. He didn't just lose Shadow Creek, Dorothy adds, reviewing reports from her contacts. He showed other towns they could fight back. They're calling it the Shadow Creek effect. Communities across the border regions standing up, refusing cartel. Influence. Kate's influence grows beyond the town's boundaries. Other communities seek her advice, inspiration, hope. They learn that resistance requires more than weapons. It needs unbreakable bonds and unwavering determination. The legend of the female Special Forces operator who sparked a revolution against cartel power spreads. Tell them, Kate suggests to visiting town leaders, that everything changed when we stopped seeing differences and started seeing family. Her military experience now serves a different mission, teaching communities how to stand together against intimidation. Sarah's clinic becomes a gathering place where stories of the battle grow with each telling. Remember when Kate outmaneuvered their professional hit teams? Locals ask. Remember when she turned their own tactics against them? But those who were there know the true story needs no embellishment. The Martinez Ranch expands its operations, becoming a training center where Kate shares her Special Forces experience with other communities. It's not about turning civilians into soldiers, she explains to a group of visiting ranchers. It's about showing people they're stronger together than they ever were alone. Dorothy coordinates with state authorities, documenting everything to prevent future cartel infiltration. They didn't just fail to take Shadow Creek, she tells investigators. They lost their entire northern corridor. The evidence they gathered helps dismantle cartel operations across the region. Hawk's desert wolves transition from defenders to teachers, sharing their military expertise with other towns. Best defense is a community that stands together. He explains during a training session. Kate taught us that. 1 year after Los Sonora's defeat, Shadow Creek hosts a reunion. Defenders gather, sharing memories and celebrating victory. Kate moves among them, greeting each personally, remembering shared battles. She's not just a rancher anymore, Hawk observes to Sarah. She's become something legend won't capture. Living, proof that some choices transcend fear, Sarah agrees, watching Kate train a group of women from neighboring communities in self-defense. The veterinarian's clinic now includes a community center where people learn more than just resistance. They learn unity. Maria's role expands beyond town council head to regional coordinator, helping other communities spot and prevent cartel. Infiltration. Shadow Creek showed us the pattern, she explains during a multi-town meeting. Now we can stop them before they gain a foothold. The Martinez Ranch becomes a symbol of transformation. Where cartel forces once sought to establish a smuggling corridor, now stands a beacon of hope and resistance. Kate's grandfather's legacy grows in ways he never imagined. His choice of land, becoming the foundation for something greater. You know what, sis? Dorothy says one evening, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold. Some folks still ask what made you stay and fight. They don't understand that some bonds can't be explained, they can only be lived. Kate's response carries quiet pride as she surveys her land. Tell them, it was never about just defending property. It was about showing that when people choose to stand together, no force can break them. The training center attracts attention from law enforcement and military observers. They come to study how one special forces operator turned a vulnerable town into an impenetrable community. Kate shares her experience, but always emphasizes the key lesson. Individual skill matters less than collective will. Shadow Creek's transformation becomes a case study in community defense. Federal agencies study their methods, looking to replicate their success in other border regions. But as Kate tells every official who visits, you can't copy our tactics without understanding our heart. Sarah's practice expands to include a regional medical center, symbolizing Shadow Creek's growth from target to stronghold. Every patient I treat, she tells her staff, reminds me of how close we came to losing everything and how much stronger we've grown. The Desert Wolves establish a network of veteran groups across the border region, creating a web of trained observers and rapid responders. Kate showed us that military experience has value beyond combat. Hawk explains to new recruits. It's about protecting communities, not just fighting enemies. Maria coordinates with federal task forces, her experience helping identify and prevent cartel infiltration attempts in other towns. Shadow Creek taught us their playbook, she says during a briefing. Now we can read their moves before they make them. Kate's satellite phone still buzzes with messages from her old Special Forces team, but now they're about success stories rather than warnings. Communities across the border region report cartel operations disrupted, influence diminished, power broken. The wind carries new promise across Shadow Creek, and with it certainty that something profound has changed. A town has found its strength, a community has discovered its heart, and a former Special Forces operator has shown that the greatest battles are won not through force alone, but through unwavering loyalty to those we choose to protect. Kate stands on her porch as sunset paints the land gold. The mountains her grandfather chose after his war, now standing as monuments to a different kind of victory. Her Special Forces training taught her how to fight, but Shadow Creek taught her what to fight for. You know what they call you down south now? Hawk asks, joining her with coffee. La Guerrera, the warrior woman. They say you're what Cartel. Soldiers fear in the dark. Kate's laugh carries genuine amusement. They've got it wrong. Tell them the real story, about a community that decided some things matter more than fear, about people who chose to stand together when standing alone meant falling. The night wind whispers stories of unlikely heroes, of battles won through unity. of a special forces operator who taught people that family isn't about blood. It's about the choices we make and the loyalty we share. And in those whispers, Shadow. Creek's legend lives on, reminding everyone that some bonds transcend fear, some choices define us, and some stories change not just those who live them, but all who hear them and believe. The sun sets behind mountains that once witnessed war. Now standing guard over peace, Shadow Creek sleeps quietly, protected by more than weapons and walls. It's guarded by the unbreakable spirit of those who choose to stand together, led by a woman who proved that the strongest force isn't fear or violence, but the unwavering bond between people who decide that some things are worth any price to protect. Up next, two incredible stories you won't want to miss. Kate's voice carries across the gathering at Shadow Creek's new community center. She's been asked to share their story with visiting officials from other border towns, each facing their own cartel pressures. The sun rises over the Coronado Mountains, casting long shadows across Shadow Creek's transformed landscape. 2 years have passed since Los Sonora's defeat, and the changes run deeper than rebuilt buildings and new facilities. The spirit of the town has evolved, becoming something that draws people from across the border region seeking to understand their success. It wasn't just about military training, Kate explains to the assembled group. Special forces taught me how to fight, but this community taught me what victory really means. Her words carry the weight of hard-won wisdom as she guides another tour through the training center established at Martinez Ranch. Sarah's medical center has become a regional hub, treating patients from communities across 3 states. Every person who walks through these doors, she tells her staff during morning rounds, represents another family choosing to stand against cartel influence. The Desert Wolves maintain their presence, but their role has shifted from defenders to mentors. Hawk leads training sessions for other communities, teaching them not just tactics, but the importance of unity. Kate showed us that the strongest defense isn't weapons, he explains to a new group. It's the bonds between neighbors. Maria coordinates with federal task forces, her experience helping identify and prevent cartel infiltration attempts in other regions. Shadow Creek became the template, she reports during a multi-agency briefing. We've prevented takeover attempts in 12 communities using the lessons we learned here. Dorothy's medical expertise now serves a broader mission. The Combat Medic Training Center she established helps communities prepare for worst-case scenarios while hoping they never come. Being ready isn't about living in fear, she tells her students. It's about choosing confidence over uncertainty. The Martinez Ranch has expanded its operations, becoming both working cattle ranch and community defense training facility. Kate walks the grounds with visiting law enforcement officials, explaining how they transformed vulnerability into strength. The cartels thought isolation was our weakness, she says, gesturing to the mountainous terrain. We made it our advantage. Shadow. Greek success ripples across the border region. Communities that once seemed destined to fall to cartel influence now stand resilient, connected through networks of mutual support and shared determination. The Shadow Creek effect, as federal agencies have labeled it, demonstrates how local resistance can disrupt even the most entrenched criminal organizations. Remember what grandfather used to say, Dorothy asks Kate as they watch sunset paint the mountains gold, about how this land would choose its own guardians. The sisters share a moment of understanding, knowing their family legacy has grown beyond anything their grandfather could have imagined. The training center hosts groups from across the country, teaching more than just defensive tactics. The key, Kate explains during a leadership session, is understanding that community defense isn't about turning civilians into soldiers. It's about showing people they're already strong enough when they stand together. Sarah's clinic maintains records of their victory, documenting not just the physical wounds they treated, but the community's healing and growth. "We didn't just survive," she tells visitors touring the facility. "We proved that small towns don't have to be victims. We can be warriors in our own way." The Desert Wolves Clubhouse becomes a hub for veteran outreach, connecting former military personnel with communities that need their expertise. "Kate showed us that our service didn't end when we left the military," Hawk tells new members. "It just took a different form." Maria's role expands to regional security coordinator, helping multiple communities develop early warning systems against cartel infiltration. "We learned to spot their patterns," she explains during a town council meeting. "Now we can stop them before they gain any foothold." The transformation draws attention from international observers studying community-based resistance to organized crime. Kate shares their story, but always emphasizes the human element. "Special forces training helped," she tells a UN delegation, "but the real strength came from people choosing to stand together despite their fears." Shadow Creek's methods spread through formal and informal channels. Other towns adapt their tactics, learning from both their successes and the mistakes they overcame. The cartel's traditional strategy of isolating and intimidating communities fails against this new model of unified resistance. "Look at this." Maria shows Kate satellite images during their weekly security briefing. Cartel operations shifting away from regions that have adopted our methods. They're learning that some communities cost too much to break. The Martinez Ranch hosts regular gatherings where different towns share experiences and strategies. During one such meeting, a visitor asks Kate the question she's heard countless times. "Weren't you afraid, standing against Los Sonora with just a small town behind you?" Kate's response carries the quiet confidence that once guided Special Forces missions through impossible odds. "Fear isn't about what you're facing," she explains. "It's about what you're willing to lose. We decided some things matter more than fear." The sun sets behind mountains that once witnessed war, now standing guard over a different kind of peace. Shadow Creek sleeps quietly, protected by more than weapons and walls. It's guarded by the unbreakable spirit of those who chose to stand together. Led by a woman who proved that the strongest force isn't fear or violence, but the unwavering bond between people who decide that some things are worth any price to protect. If our story teaches anything, Kate tells the latest group of visitors, it's that victory doesn't belong to the strongest fighters. It belongs to those who refuse to be broken, who choose to stand together when standing alone would be easier. The wind carries hope across Shadow Creek, and with it, the certainty that something profound has changed. A town has found its strength, a community has discovered its heart, and a former Special Forces operator has shown that the greatest battles are won not through force alone, but through unwavering loyalty to those we choose to protect. "You know what I find most remarkable?" Sarah asks one evening as they watch new families move into rebuilt homes. "It's not just about us anymore. Every community that stands up to the cartels carries a piece of Shadow Creek with them." Kate nods, understanding. The legend of Shadow Creek has grown beyond their small town, becoming a beacon for others facing similar threats. But those who lived through those days know the true story isn't about tactical victories or strategic successes. It's about people discovering that some bonds can't be broken by force or fear. The night wind whispers stories of unlikely heroes, of battles won through unity, of a Special Forces operator who taught people that family isn't about blood. It's about the choices we make and the loyalty we share. And in those whispers, Shadow Creek's legend lives on, reminding everyone that some bonds transcend fear, some choices define us, and some stories change not just those who live them, but all who hear them and believe. Subscribe to our channel For more incredible stories like this one, the narrator's voice carries warmth and promise. Up next, 2 more tales that will leave you speechless. 5 years after Los Sonora's defeat, Shadow Creek's transformation has become a blueprint for community resistance across the border region. Kate Martinez stands at the podium of the newly established Border Community Defense Summit, addressing representatives from towns across 3 states. "The cartels thought they could erase us," she tells the assembled crowd, her voice carrying the quiet authority that once guided Special Forces missions. "Instead, we showed them that some communities can't be broken because their strength comes from something deeper than fear." The summit, hosted in Shadow Creek's expanded community center, represents more than just a gathering. It's a testament to how far they've come. Law enforcement officials, federal agents, and community leaders fill the room, each seeking to understand and replicate Shadow Creek's success. Sarah Chen, now directing a regional medical network, presents data showing the broader impact of their victory. "It's not just about reduced cartel activity," she explains, pointing to her charts. "We're seeing communities thrive once they realize they don't have to live under the shadow of fear." The Desert Wolves have evolved into a formal training organization, with chapters across the border states. Hawk leads certification programs for community defense teams, teaching them the principles that helped Shadow Creek survive. Kate showed us that military experience has value beyond combat, he tells his latest class. "It's about protecting communities, not just fighting enemies." Maria Torres coordinates with federal task forces from her new position as Regional Security Director. The Shadow Creek model, as it's now officially known, has been implemented in over 30 communities. Each success builds on the last, she reports during the summit. The cartels are losing their grip on the border regions. Dorothy's Medical Training Center has become a mandatory stop for emergency responders working in border communities. "Preparation isn't about expecting violence," she teaches her students. "It's about building resilience so thoroughly that violence becomes less likely." The Martinez Ranch sprawls across its original acreage, plus additional land once targeted by the cartels. Kate has transformed it into both working ranch and regional training facility where communities learn not just defense, but unity. "The land teaches its own lessons," she tells visitors. "It shows us that strength comes from deep roots and mutual support." International observers study what media outlets have dubbed the Shadow Creek Revolution. The systematic dismantling of cartel influence through community empowerment has drawn attention from regions facing similar challenges worldwide. Kate shares their experience but emphasizes the human element. "Special Forces taught me to fight," she explains to a UN delegation. "But Shadow Creek taught me what's worth fighting for. We didn't win through superior firepower or better tactics. We won because we chose to stand together when standing alone would have been easier." The transformation spreads through formal and informal channels. Other towns adapt their methods, learning from both their successes and the mistakes they overcame. The cartel's traditional strategy of isolating and intimidating communities fails against this new model of unified resistance. "Look at these statistics," Maria shows during a security briefing. "Cartel operations shifting away from regions that have adopted our methods. They're learning that some communities cost too much to break." Her presentation reveals a systematic retreat of organized crime from areas implementing the Shadow Creek model. The training center hosts regular rotations of law enforcement, military observers, and community leaders. During one session, a visitor asked Kate the question she's heard countless times: how do you turn ordinary citizens into effective defenders without militarizing their communities? Kate's response carries the wisdom earned through years of both military service and community leadership. "The goal isn't to turn civilians into soldiers," she explains. It's to show people they already have everything they need to resist. The cartels rely on isolation and fear. We teach connection and confidence. Sarah's medical network has expanded to include mental health support for communities recovering from cartel influence. The physical wounds heal faster than the psychological ones, she explains during a panel discussion. But we've learned that community unity is the best medicine for both. The Desert Wolves training program has earned federal recognition. Hawk oversees a standardized curriculum that combines tactical awareness with community building. Kate, who taught us that the strongest defense isn't about weapons or walls, he tells each new class. It's about making sure every person knows they're part of something worth protecting. Maria's regional security network has prevented dozens of attempted cartel infiltrations. We can spot their patterns now, she explains to visiting officials. The front companies, the stage developments, the gradual corruption. What worked against Shadow Creek will never work again. The Martinez Ranch hosts international delegations studying their methods. During one tour, a European security expert asks what surprises the cartels most about their approach. Kate's answer reflects years of observation. They expect resistance from guns and guards. They don't expect resistance from kindergarten teachers and grocery store owners who refuse to be intimidated. The summit concludes with a ceremony honoring communities that have successfully implemented the Shadow Creek model. Each success story builds on the last, creating a network of resistance that grows stronger with each small victory. The cartels thought fear was their greatest weapon, Kate tells the gathered representatives. We proved that unity is stronger than fear, that ordinary people who choose to stand together can defeat any force that relies on intimidation. As the sun sets behind mountains that once witnessed their desperate battle for survival, Kate reflects on how far they've come. Shadow Creek has grown beyond a simple border town into a symbol of hope for communities facing similar challenges. You know what I find most remarkable? Sarah asks, joining her on the ranch's porch. It's not just about fighting back anymore. It's about building something new, showing people they don't have to accept a future defined by fear. The wind carries promise across Shadow Creek, and with it, the certainty that their victory has sparked something lasting. A town's refusal to break has grown into a movement that transforms communities from victims into guardians of their own destiny. Tell them our real story, Kate addresses the summit's closing session. Not about special forces training or tactical victories. Tell them about ordinary people who discovered they were stronger together than any force trying to tear them apart. The night wind whispers stories of unlikely heroes, of battles won through unity, of a woman who showed that the strongest defense comes not from weapons or walls, but from the unbreakable bonds between people who choose to stand together against darkness. Shadow Creek's legacy lives on in every community that finds the courage to stand against intimidation, in every small victory against forces that once seemed insurmountable. Their story reminds everyone that some bonds transcend fear, some choices define generations, and some victories change not just those who win them, but all who learn from their example. The mountains stand guard over a peace built not on force, but on the strength of people who discovered that family isn't about blood. It's about the choices we make and the loyalty we share. And in that peace, Shadow Creek's greatest victory endures, showing the world that the human spirit, when united in common cause, remains undefeatable. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time and effort, so if you're enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Up next, 2 more incredible stories are waiting for you right on your screen. If you enjoyed this one, you won't want to miss them. Just click to watch and don't forget to subscribe. It would mean a lot.